Okay, welcome back. The other day we spent quite a bit of time on the sine graphs, and we're just going to quickly go over the difference between the sine graph and the cosine graph, which isn't a big difference. Recall from the unit circle, we went over the values for the sine. What about the values for the cosine? So at 0 degrees or 0 radians, the value of cosine is 1, and then at pi over 2 it's 0, at pi it's -1, at 3 pi over 2 it's back to 0 again, and then at 2 pi it's back to 1. So it still takes 2 pi to complete one cycle for these cosine values to start repeating themselves. So the period, the standard period for cosine, is 2 pi, just like sine. Okay? So the amplitude is still the same. The b value is still the same. The number of periods from 0 to 2 pi. So to calculate any new period, it's 2 pi divided by b. So if we look at a cosine graph, the parent function, it behaves differently than the sine graph. So we still have 0 to 2 pi. We still have our pi, pi over 2, and 3 pi over 2 is our standard x values. We still have a y value of 1 and -1. But instead of starting at the midline, the values start at, the cosine of 0 is not 0. The cosine of 0 is 1. So the cosine graph starts above the midline, and then when you get to pi over 2, it's on the midline, and then at pi, it's below, back to on, and then it ends exactly where it started. Now, this, don't put an arrow up here. This is as high as it goes. So if you want to put an arrow on, the arrow should go here. So that is the standard cycle of a cosine graph. Starts at a different location above the equilibrium or the midline. And that's the only difference. Okay? So let's take a look at this graph here. Let me just zoom out a little bit here. There we go. So this graph here starts at 3, goes down to -3, back up to 3. So I know my amplitude, which is always positive, is 3. Okay? From 0 to 4 pi is one complete cycle. So I know my period is 4 pi. Now, we didn't talk about domain and range, but domain, these graphs are periodic. They just keep repeating themselves over and over and over and over and over again. So all x values, we only graph one cycle, but there's an infinite number of cycles. So the domain is all x values. Now the range are your y values. And again, when you're using interval notation, you want to use a bracket to include, and you start with the lowest y value on the graph. Not the highest. The lowest y value on the graph is -3. The highest y value on the graph is 3. So that's a review of domain and range, x's and y's. Okay, can we write an equation? Y equals 3 cosine. What is the b value if your period is 4 pi? Well, look at this graph. How many cycles can you complete from here to here? That's half a cycle. That's your b value. The formula for your b value is 2 pi, your standard period, divided by the new period 4 pi. Same answer. Okay. All right. So amplitude, still absolute value of your A value. Amplitude is a half. Your B value is 3. So the period is 2 pi divided by your B value, just like it was for sine graph. So you have 2 pi over 3. So your period is 2 pi over 3. Half of 2 pi over 3 is pi over 3. Half of pi over 3 is pi over 6. So to find this x value again with fractions, add them together, divide by 2. 1 pi over 3 plus 2 pi over 3 is a total of 3 pi over 3. That's 1 pi. And then you divide it by 2. Add them together and divide by 2. And then you can check your increments. They should all be equal increments. 0 to 1 pi over 6. This one is equivalent to 2 pi over 6. This is equivalent to 3 pi over 6. And this is equivalent to 4 pi over 6. Okay? All right, so let's just do these two graphs. I would go ahead and stop the video and see if you can answer the next two graphs. 5x values, 2y values with a nice smooth curve. So stop the video and try the next two problems. Okay, welcome back. Hopefully you stopped the video. The amplitude is 4. The period is 2 pi divided by a third. But I like to multiply by 3 over 1. So our new period is 6 pi. So 0 to 6 pi is our period. 3 pi is the middle. 3 pi over 2 is the middle of that. And 9 pi over 2 is the middle of that. Our amplitude is 4. So we're going to go up to 4, down to negative 4. And here we are doing the cosine graph. The cosine graph starts in amplitude above, midline, amplitude below, midline, and back to where it started from. Nice smooth curve, no pointy edges. Don't go past your mins and your maxes. Okay. The next one, hopefully again you stop the video. The amplitude is 5. Amplitude is always positive, it's a distance. The period is 2 pi divided by your B value. We have a period of 2. A period of 2. Well, a period of 2 is less than pi, so that's going to shrink it up a little bit. I'm going to squeeze this in here. Let's just call this 2. So midline or midway is 1. Then you have 1.5, and then you have 3 halves. You're going all the way up to 5. Down to negative 5. And again, this is a negative cosine graph. So where do you think that starts? That's going to be below. Then you're going to be midline. Then you're going to be above, below, and you're going to stop where you started. Okay, so everything is the same as the sine graph. The only difference is positive cosine starts above the midline and a negative cosine graph starts below the midline. Everything else is the same as the cosine. Okay, simple enough. That's the end of the notes for today.